Can you go to publicinput.com/resilience2050? Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get started momentarily. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get started momentarily. If you're joining by phone, you can also join us through our project page, and that website is publicinput.com/resilience2050. That's public input, publicinput.com/resilience, which is RESILIENCE 2050. And there you should see the live stream. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today for our virtual public meeting for Resilience 2050, the 2024 to 2027 Transportation Improvement Program and Air Quality Report. Today's meeting will begin with a welcome from the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board Chair, followed by a presentation by Baltimore Metropolitan Council staff. We will be providing you with an overview of our $74 billion transportation investment plan, and then we will have time to answer questions or hear your comments. If you'd like to share your comments during the meeting, you can add a comment to the chat box below this video or text the code and Resilience 2050 to the number 73224. You can also leave us a comment via email at resilience2050@publicinput.com. If you'd like to participate by phone, you can dial 855-925-2801, extension 1874. And if you'd like to be added to the speakers queue, you can press *3. Next, we're going to share a welcome video.
Good afternoon. I am Sam Sneed, Director of Transportation for Anne Arundel County's Office of Transportation and Chair of the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board, or BRTB for short. On behalf of the BRTB, I want to thank you for joining us to learn more about our Resilience 2050 Long-Range Transportation Plan. The 2024 to 2027 Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, and the associated Air Quality Conformity Determination. These detailed plans for investments in our region's transportation systems are open for review and public comment through Tuesday, June 20th. Our purpose is to help you learn more about these plans, how to view them, and learn more about the specific programs and projects they detail. We'd also like to invite you to join us at any one of our 7 in-person meetings at locations around our region in the coming weeks. In a moment, we'll start a brief overview of the planning documents available for review. This overview will be followed by an opportunity for you to ask questions and learn where to submit comments. On behalf of the BRTB, thank you so much for engaging in this step of the planning process. We really look forward to reviewing your thoughts and feedback. I am joined by several staff from the Baltimore Metropolitan Council, which supports the work of the BRTB. Mr. Zach Kaufman will provide an overview of the Resilience 2050 Long Range Plan. Mr. Keith Kuchark will provide an overview of the TIP. Ms. Anna Marshall will share information on the Air Quality Conformity Determination. And Ms. Monica Haynes-Benchetta will share public involvement opportunities. And Ms. Regina Aris will moderate the Q&A at the end. Now I'll turn it over to Mr. Kaufman. Zach?
Thanks, Sam. Hello, my name is Zach Kaufman. I'm a senior transportation planner at BMC, and I manage the development of long-range transportation plan, or LRTP. So today I'll be giving you a broad overview of the process for developing Resilience 2050, adapting to the challenges of tomorrow. Resilience 2050 is the new long-range transportation plan for the Baltimore region. Long-term planning for the transportation system is critical to ensuring that the Baltimore region grows and develops in a way that is consistent with our regional goals and objectives. Resilience 2050 contains a mix of projects anticipated to receive federal funds from 2028 to 2050, including transit, bicycle, pedestrian, roadway, and interchange projects. So our first step was to look at the region's transportation needs and challenges over the next 25 years. We developed 9 goals that form the guiding principles for our region's transportation system. Each goal is accompanied by a number of strategies intended to help the region to implement each goal. So, for example, improved system safety is one of the regional goals, and eliminating hazardous conditions in high crash locations is a strategy for improving system safety. The 9 regional goals include improving accessibility, increasing mobility, improving system safety, improving and maintaining the existing infrastructure, implementing environmentally responsible transportation solutions, improving system security, promoting prosperity and economic opportunity, fostering participation and cooperation among all stakeholders, and promoting informed decision-making. Planning a transportation system for 20+ years is a complex task. We considered many factors and trends that may affect the regional transportation network in the future. Planning for the future requires forecasts of where people might live and work over the time period covered by Resilience 2050. Our local members work together to forecast population, households, and employment through 2050. And these forecasts help to inform the project selection process, as well as the analysis of the potential future effects of projects in the plan. The Baltimore region is anticipated to add nearly 360,000 people through 2050, an increase of 13%. The number of households is expected to increase by 15%, and employment is anticipated to increase by 26%, or 374,000 jobs. Resilience 2050 also includes a discussion of various factors and trends related to transportation, including environmental issues and challenges, active transportation and transit, highway safety concerns, supporting freight movement, and emerging technologies such as micromobility and connected and automated vehicles. So next, I'll focus on how we select projects for Resilience 2050. So there are always more transportation needs than resources available, and projects ultimately included in Resilience 2050 cannot exceed the amount of funding we expect to be available. So prioritizing projects requires a project scoring methodology to rank projects, estimates of project costs, and an idea of how much money is anticipated to be available to fund these projects. The process begins when local jurisdictions and state agencies submitted candidate projects last year. A total of 98 projects were submitted, 62 roadway and 36 transit. Each of these projects was given a score composed of a policy score and a technical score. The policy score involves project sponsors ranking projects as low, medium, or high priority. And project sponsors also include whether the project already has any committed funding. For the technical score, projects are scored based on criteria that are drawn directly from the regional goals. Projects are scored on things such as safety, accessibility, mobility, environmental conservation, and security. The policy and technical scores are added to yield the total project score. Once we have project scores, we need to know how much projects might cost and how much funding is anticipated to be available through 2050. So we worked with the Maryland Transit Administration and the Maryland State Highway Administration to estimate costs for all projects. We also include a forecast of local, state, and federal revenues anticipated to be available through 2050. This financial forecast is broken down into three primary categories: funds for operating the transportation system, funds for preserving the transportation system, and funds for expanding the transportation system. The major capital projects included in the plan are anticipated to primarily use state and federal funds. And this chart shows state and federal funding forecast for prior LRTBs and for Resilience 2050 on the far right. The Resilience 2050 financial forecast includes nearly $70 billion in state and federal revenues. Individual totals are $37 billion for operating, $21 billion for system preservation, and $12 billion for expansion. Not all of this funding is available for projects in Resilience 2050. Some of it goes to supporting more generalized investments that aren't yet defined. 85 of the submitted projects were expansion projects that compete for that $12 billion in expansion funding on the far right. There were also 13 submitted system preservation projects. So based on project scores, estimated project costs, and the financial forecast, we selected a preferred alternative of 92 projects to include in Resilience 2050. This includes 56 roadway projects and 36 transit projects. Now, the majority of these, as I mentioned, are expansion projects at about 86% of the projects. So the chart here shows the distribution of expansion investments between transit and roadway projects. Transit projects get about $4.8 billion or 41% of the total in Resilience 2050, and roadway projects get about $6.9 billion or 59%. The preferred alternative also sets aside $250 million from the $12 billion in expansion funding for various strategies intended to improve air quality in the Baltimore region. These include investments in strategies to optimize the performance of existing roadways without expanding capacity, investments in creating roadways that are safe for all users, and investments in 16 regional bicycle and pedestrian priority projects. You can use this interactive map to explore all of the projects included in Resilience 2050, clicking on projects of interest to get more details, and you can also zoom into projects in individual counties. That concludes the portion of the presentation on Resilience 2050, and now I will turn it over to my colleague, Keith Kacharik.
Well, thank you, Zach. As Zach mentioned, my name is Keith Kacharik, and I am a senior transportation planner here at BMC, and I manage the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. Today, I'll be giving a brief summary of what's included in the 2024 to 2027 TIP. So the TIP includes all federally funded and regionally significant projects that are programming funding over the next 4 fiscal years. Federally funded projects are those that receive funds from either the Federal Highway or Federal Transit Administration, and regionally significant projects are projects that may not necessarily be federally funded, but are of regional importance. And these are generally capacity improvement projects that must be included in our air quality model to ensure that the Baltimore region adheres to air quality standards. Additionally, projects in the TIP are evaluated to ensure that they are meeting our regional transportation planning goals, such as safety, promoting prosperity and economic opportunities, environmental responsibility, and security, system security, just to name a few. These goals are laid out, as Zach mentioned, in our long-range plan, Resilience 2050. Projects in the long-range plan are more conceptual in nature compared to the projects in the TIP. So as projects in the long-range plan move from the conceptual stage to the implementation stage, they move into the short-range transportation improvement program, or the TIP. The draft 2024 to 2027 TIP programs a total of $4.24 billion in federal, state, and local money. This funding is dedicated to all types of transportation projects, including highway, transit, bicycle, and pedestrian, and is focused on operating, maintaining, and expanding our transportation system. It is important to note that similar to the long-range transportation plan, the TIP is a fiscally constrained document, meaning program funds cannot exceed what is reasonably expected to be available from our state, local, and federal sources. Funding is divided into 5 primary phases. Construction, where the bulk of the funding goes, engineering, planning, right-of-way acquisition, or other items included. Other items included in the other phase include things such as environmental document preparation or pre-construction activities. There are 9 possible funding categories in the TIP. This year, the largest category of funding is highway preservation, with about 42% of the funds in the TIP. That's followed by highway capacity at about 22%. Then transit preservation is next at roughly 18.5%, followed by emission reduction strategies at just over 6%. And smaller amounts of funding are included in port projects, commuter rail preservation, and so on. It should be noted that there is some crossover in funding categories. For example, highway preservation projects may have some environmental safety elements, but this gives us a general idea of how the money is being spent. There are 143 projects in the draft TIP, 13 of which are new this year. There are also 3 projects that were in older TIPs that have been removed for various reasons, but are now back into the current TIP. Of those 143 projects, over half fall under the highway preservation category, followed by highway capacity projects, transit preservation projects, and emission reduction strategy projects. Environmental safety projects, port projects, commuter rail projects, and miscellaneous projects, and enhancement program projects make up the remainder. Funding can be broken down further by project sponsor or agency. The largest source of program funds is the Maryland Department of Transportation State Highway Administration. State Highway Administration programs nearly $1.9 billion. The next largest source of program funds is the Maryland Transit Administration at about $865 million. It's also important to note that the $865 million in transit funding does not include the vast majority of MTA operating funds, which are state funds only. The Maryland Transportation Authority and Baltimore City are next, followed by the Maryland Port Administration, and finally, locally sponsored projects, which are projects sponsored by Anne Arundel County, Baltimore County, Carroll County, Harford County, Howard County, and Queen Anne's County, and they program about $215.5 million. Baltimore City is considered a locally sponsored as well, but they have enough funding to stand alone, so we list that separately. The TIP document includes much more than just the 143 previously mentioned projects and corresponding funding information. TIP also includes detailed information regarding transportation analysis zones as environmental justice or EJ areas, where there's a greater concentration of low income or minority populations compared to their respective regional averages. This analysis seeks to ensure that the benefits and burdens of transportation investments are shared as equitably as possible. Returning again this year is our interactive project map. It should be pointed out that many of the transit projects are regional in nature and cannot be mapped individually. And these include items such as preventive maintenance, vehicle repairs and replacements, and infrastructure improvements. So there's a lot of transit projects that don't show up on this map. I'd like to take a few minutes to highlight just a few of the projects in the draft TIP. In Anne Arundel County, Maryland 170 will be widened from Norcross Lane to Weicker Road and will improve safety and operations. The project includes sidewalks and bicycle compatible shoulders, and it's estimated at $17.9 million. Baltimore City highlights 5 new projects this year, including pedestrian and safety improvements along North Avenue from Mount Royal Avenue to Hilton Street. There are also 4 roadway rehabilitation projects along Pennsylvania Avenue, 25th Street, Orleans Street, and in Johnston Square, all of which include sidewalk and pedestrian safety improvements. In Baltimore County, funding for the Dolefield Boulevard interchange along I-795 will provide a new interchange and widen I-795 between Owings Mills Boulevard and Franklin Boulevard. This is a $149 million project with construction set to begin sometime in 2027. In Carroll County, Maryland 32, from 2nd Street to Main Street, is a $7.8 million project aimed at improving safety and operation and includes intersection geometry improvements, extending turn lanes, and modified access points. Hartford County includes 12 bridge repair or replacement projects that will improve safety and extend the lifespan of these structures. In Howard County, the Patapsco Regional Greenway from Elk Ridge to the Guinness Open Gate Brewery is a 1.5-mile segment over the overall 40-mile Patapsco Regional Greenway. This project will provide a 10 to 12-foot hard surface trail, including a 290-foot long boardwalk over sensitive wetland areas. And finally, in Queen Anne's County, the Maryland 18B from Castle Marina Road to the Kent Narrows is a planning study looking at multimodal and capacity improvements along the corridor. And this concludes my portion of the presentation. And at this time, I'd like to turn things over to Ms. Anna Marshall, our environmental planner.
Thanks, Keith. As mentioned, hi everybody, my name is Anna Marshall, the environmental planner at BMC, and I will provide information about the federally required air quality conformity process. First of all, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, sets the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, also known as NAAQS, for criteria pollutants, which are common air pollutants. The EPA then determines which regions do not meet these standards. The State Implementation Plan, or SIP, establishes a plan for how the Baltimore region will achieve ozone standards and sets motor vehicle emission budgets for volatile organic compounds and nitrogen oxides. Ground level ozone, or smog, is caused by a chemical reaction between sunlight and VOC and NOx emissions released from cars and trucks. High levels of ozone in the air can trigger health reactions in sensitive populations. The Air Quality Conformity Determination document details an analysis of the mobile emissions in the Baltimore region as a result of implementing the LRTP and the TIP. Some highlights of the document are as follows. We demonstrate motor vehicle emissions using the MOVES model developed by the EPA to analyze the emissions from vehicle travel. The MOVES model has inputs including socioeconomic forecasts like population, housing, and employment numbers, mobile source emissions of VOCs and NOx, which are precursors for ozone, and data about the types of vehicles on the road and climate factors. The results of the conformity analysis indicate that projected mobile source emissions are below the established budgets for all tested years. Why is an air quality analysis needed? The Baltimore region does not meet the national standard for ground level ozone. As a result, the region is classified as a moderate non-attainment area for the 2015 8-hour ozone standard, which is 70 parts per billion. The Clean Air Act requires organizations like the BRTB that are in non-attainment areas to complete an air quality conformity determination process to demonstrate that the transportation projects and plans in the TIP and LRTP will not cause any new air quality violations. In conclusion, the projects in the TIP and plan do not worsen air quality, and in fact, the results show that projected emissions are well below the budgeted amounts. And you can check out the specific numbers in the following tables and follow the links in the story map to learn more. I will now turn it over to Monica. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Monica Haynes Benketta. I'm the Public Involvement Coordinator at Baltimore Metropolitan Council, and I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this overview. Now that you have had this overview, we'd like to answer your questions or hear your thoughts. If you'd like to share comments during today's meeting, you can add the comment to the chat box below this video. You can also text the keyword Resilience 2050 to the number 73224. You can leave us a comment on email at resilience2050@publicinput.com. It's RESILIENCE 2050@publicinput.com. And if you're joining us by phone, you can dial 855-925-2801 extension 1874 and press *3 to be added to the speakers queue. So now I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Regina Aris to see if we have any comments or questions that have come into the system.
Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for hanging in with us during the presentation. We do have several comments. The first one from Melanie, apparently you are concerned about detailed road projects and ambiguous transit projects, and you're concerned that this information could lead to difficulties in the state facing climate change. So what we can say, and I'll say the folks of us from on the call here are staff at BMC, and comments we will give to all of the board members. But related to projects, the description you see is based on what the project sponsor provided to us. For roadways, there are no new roads, but there are road widenings. And so that's fairly easy to describe because a road is already in the network. If you look at the projects in the plan, the local jurisdictions that submitted transit do have good descriptions about what they would like to implement. There are several major transit projects that were submitted by the Maryland Transit Administration, and they aren't more specific at this point because they're currently in a planning process and they don't know what type of alignment or what kind of mode, whether it's light rail, bus rapid transit, express bus. So there are some reasons why some of the projects aren't better defined at this point, but it's a long range plan and we do update it every 4 years. So hopefully there'll be better descriptions for the long range, and definitely by the time they move into the short range document, the Transportation Improvement Program. And we can continue the conversation, Melanie, if you want to leave us another comment about any other detail you would like, if we have it. Then we heard from Jim, and I believe some of his comments are that perhaps these projects are good, but there's a concern about increasing taxes. So both the long range and the short range document are required to be fiscally constrained. The short range document, we have actual money in the bank that our project sponsors have, we know is available. The long range forecast is reviewed by federal agencies and is what we call reasonably available. It is based on current funding and not increased taxes. Inflation is a big concern. Materials and labor cost more, and it could be that in that case, projects would be cut before taxes would increase. And so hopefully that, these documents are constrained. We are not allowed to include projects that don't have reasonable money available. And then on to the next comment, Bill had a comment about the information regarding the plan, and I'm going to ask Monica to take the first part, and then I'm going to take the second part.
Okay, thanks so much. So it looks like Bill had a little bit of an issue accessing the meeting, and we can follow up and make sure that the meeting recording is available. We are going to be having a number of in-person public meetings coming up starting next week in Carroll County. We'll be in Westminster for our first meeting. And the list of public meetings is available on the public input website, publicinput.com/resilience2050. And you'll see on the public meetings tab a whole list of 7 different public meetings and throughout the region. And our board is made up of members from each of these local jurisdictions, including Baltimore City, Carroll County, Harford County, Anne Arundel, Howard, Queen Anne's County. And so we decided to work with each of our board members to schedule a public meeting in each of those jurisdictions so that we can make sure to get out and about and hear from folks in various different areas. So we do hope that you'll be able to join us for one of those in-person public meetings, but we'll definitely take the comments that you shared, Bill, and include them in our record of comments for the board to consider.
Okay, I think Monica addressed both parts of the question from Bill. I think his first concern related to finding the information about today's meeting. And I will say, for anybody that would like to review what was said today, our group recorded this last week and it is on the website, so you could listen to it again or refer other people to it. And so I think that we kind of covered Bill's comments. Somebody is concerned about road widening, and like it or not, some of our board members feel that for people and goods to get around in their jurisdictions, they have heard from the public and the business community that they need additional lanes. It isn't up to staff to agree or disagree, but our board members who represent citizens have submitted these. So I think I really can't say anything more than that. Will had a comment, and he's trying to understand how highway expansion projects don't worsen air quality. What I can say from an air quality perspective, it does sound counterintuitive. However, what we find when we do the travel demand modeling, that traffic doesn't sit and idle and have emissions and while they sit in congestion. Free flow traffic releases far fewer emissions. And also when the jurisdictions improve signal timing, if you can move through a corridor at the speed limit and not hit every red light, that's also good for air quality. But the analysis conducted at BMC, but it is also conducted by the Maryland Department of the Environment. And it's their mission to ensure air quality safety in Maryland. So they are on record documenting the results. So strangely enough, sometimes free flow traffic reduces emissions, even though you do add lanes to get there. So let's see. We now have another comment from Will about regional transit plan corridors. Let's see, Zach, have you been looking at this one?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I can answer that a little bit. So Will's right that the average that the costs submitted by MDOT MTA for the regional transit plan corridors were based on an average per mile cost of the 7 alternatives for the east-west transit corridor. And that's because that is the only RTP corridor that's far enough along that they had cost estimates for the various options. And he's right that results in, a cost that isn't reflective of any one mode. It's different than what a bus cost would be. It's different than a light rail cost. It's different than a heavy rail cost would be. So that was deemed the best way forward for this LRTP by MDOT MTA, what they wanted to submit. But that said, if and when those projects move along and the east, west, and north, south have a preferred alternative selected and they have a way forward, then at the next long-range transportation plan update in 4 years, we would incorporate that more accurate cost, and we would go through the same fiscal constraint process. And so we would have to, potentially if a more expensive route is chosen or alternative is chosen, then maybe some other projects would have to come out, or you don't really know how it's going to look in 4 years, but we would adjust it, and it's kind of an evolving process for long range planning. Do you think that adequately answers the question, Regina?
Yeah, I hope that helps Will. And if Will has a follow-up, you can certainly put it in and we can get back to you at another time. Sure. And then our last comment today is from Melanie, concerned that MTA has provided a number of plans and she doesn't see those projects in this document. So what I can say is the backbone of this document is federal funding. And with that comes specific requirements. It is the only document in Maryland that needs to be financially constrained and air quality constrained. So MTA does have some other plans, but until they have the money to pay for them, they'll stay in those plans, those corridor plans. The Baltimore Regional Transportation Board is concerned about the lack of progress in the region. They see a lot of money going to Washington, D.C. area jurisdictions, a lot of money going to the Purple Line. 2 years ago, they had us do a study about transit governance and funding that came up with 5 possible solutions to transit governance, and elected officials, both at the county level and the state representative level, decided to form a task force, and they spent the last year going into those 5 structures for transit governance and went to the General Assembly this spring, and a law has been passed and signed by the governor to form an oversight board, and it will be housed out of BMC, and it's made up of state elected officials, local elected officials, riders, union reps, a range of people, and that's going to kick off in October of this year. So our elected officials are concerned about transit and having a voice in transit. So this new transit governance work group will start up later this year, and I think you'll see additional money for some of these corridors. Okay.
Gina, I can add
yes.
to that a tiny bit if you would like.
Sure.
So I did want to point out that, and Melanie, you may have seen this, but so when we talk about federally funded projects in the TIP and the LRTP, we're talking about Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration funds. But there are other projects that are not kind of under the funding purview of the BRTB, but that we include in the plan because they may come from other funding sources. And so one of those funding sources is the Federal Railroad Administration. And MDOT MTA did submit some MARC-related projects that are anticipated to use FRA funds. Those projects are included. They are listed in the document in Chapter 7 on page 34. But they aren't part of the preferred alternative because they're not anticipated to use FTA funding. So I won't, give you all the details here, but I'm happy to send that to you if you'd like. But the BNP tunnel project is in there, which also includes a West Baltimore MARC station. There's also a BWI fourth track from Odenton MARC to Halethorpe MARC that is also listed under FRA projects there. So there is some additional funding for MARC. It's or money associated with MARC, but it's anticipated to use Federal Railroad Administration funds.
Thank you, Zach. Okay, and so we'll wrap it up here. Melody did bring up the issue of induced demand, and that is a legitimate issue. Maryland has passed a law, and we will, as a state, only be allowed to buy electric vehicles, I believe, by 2035. We're actively trying to support biking. BMC is the regional sponsor for Bike to Work Week. So we're trying to put as many options forward because not everybody has a short trip or is physically able to do some of these things. So we are aware of it. Okay, last question here. So Will sent a comment, Air Quality and Highway. Okay. Empirical evidence. I would have to check with our modeling and Federal Highway Administration, but EPA and MDE, whose missions are to ensure the health of Americans or Marylanders, they have the final decision on this air quality document. So that is the third document we discussed today. Feel free to look through that, and we'll see if we can find some information to respond to Will's last question. Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate having you here. The conversation is helpful because we all learn more. And we're going to be sure to share this with the elected officials because they're the ones that make the decisions and they need to hear from you. So we will share all of this. Monica, do you have any closing or are we all set?
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today. This was a really robust discussion. And I just wanted to wrap up by saying, we've got over $74 billion in transportation investments that are planned for the future in the next 20, 25 years. And we really want to know what you think. So if you have additional thoughts or comments, please let us know by June 20th. For more information and to see our plans, you can stay on this website at publicinput.com/resilience2050. And there you'll see we have an overview tab, which has detailed, which has an overview of each of the different documents that are open for comment, and then links to each of those comments. It's a lot of, there's a lot of detailed information that we've prepared for the public to consider. And so we definitely would encourage you to take some time to look through that. On the Share Your Thoughts tab, once you've taken a look through the information, you can see that we have a number of ways for you to reach us, including taking our short survey online. You can leave us a voicemail, and the phone number for that is on the screen. You can text us via the keyword Resilience 2050 to the number 73224, or you can drop us an email at resilience2050@publicinput.com. We're also on social media, primarily on Facebook and Twitter, and we have two channels. One would be the Baltimore Metropolitan Council channel, or Baltimore Metro Co. And we also have a channel called Be More Involved, which encourages folks to participate in the planning process throughout the region, and let you know about ways that you can be involved and civically engaged in the planning process. So find us on Twitter or Facebook at Baltimore Metro Co. or Be More Involved, and you can share a comment there. We prefer if you do that, you use the hashtag BRTBListens, BRTBListens. And so we thank you so much again for being a valuable member of the public and a key stakeholder in the regional transportation planning process. We really hope you found this information helpful, and we look forward to hearing from you more at publicinput.com. Resilience 2050. Thanks again from everyone on behalf of the Baltimore Metropolitan Council and Baltimore Regional Transportation Board. We look forward to hearing from you soon.
Okay, bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye, everyone.